Good evening. On behalf of the governing body of the City of Passaic, we welcome you to the May 6, 2025 City Council meeting. In accordance with Chapter 231, Public Laws of 1975, adequate notice of this meeting was provided by resolution of the Municipal Council adopted on June 18, 2024, setting forth the schedule of meetings for the year 2024-2025. Said notice was published and posted on the City Hall Bulletin Board by the Office of the City Clerk. Please be further advised this public meeting will be conducted in person. The Zoom stream provided is for viewing only and is offered to the public as a convenience. On April 23rd, 2025, public notice and Zoom instructions for this meeting were published in the Herald News and posted on the City of Passaic website at www.cityofpassaic.com. Council agendas. Instructions are also available on the last page of this agenda. Please be guided accordingly.
Roll call, please.
Councilman Love,
Present.
Councilwoman Mello,
Present.
Councilman Schwartz,
Present.
Councilman Garcia,
Present.
Councilman Colon Montañez,
Present.
and Council President Scheer.
President, should we all please rise?
Heavenly Father, we want to thank you, Lord, for allowing us to meet this evening. We ask you to please guide us in the by the agendas that are set before us. In your beloved name we pray. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Good evening and welcome to our meeting of the council. If you do not have an agenda, you can go on the internet and get the agenda as well as all the backup material, including resolutions, ordinances, communications, etc. All the information which the council has been given by the administration tonight is included and available to you. At this point, we'd like to turn to our agenda, Mayor's Update, Roman numeral 4. Mr. Mayor, congratulations on, before you start, sir, I cannot tell you the words in terms of that activity the other day. I don't know how many hundreds, if not thousands of kids we had, but it was
Children's Day was a
Just-
huge success in the city of Passaic. It was
just an amazing, amazing event.
thank you, Council President, as always, working alongside with the City Council, the administration, all of the hardworking staff members. We were able to provide a remarkable day of joy, activities, and toys to well over 1,500 kids. I mean, so many families showed up. We saw a remarkable outpouring of support. I want to thank the Human Services Department as well as Recreation and all those who partnered with us, our police, our fire department. We had bouncy houses. It was just a wonderful time, especially considering the climate that we live in today. We wanted to ensure that we can provide our children with an opportunity to enjoy recreation, to know that the city is here with them, not just the children, but the families of the city of Passaic. Thank you, Council President, for being there. Saw you going around and enjoying time with the kids. It was a tough time getting you out of the bouncy house, but eventually you gave an opportunity for the other kids to play. So thank you, Council President. All jokes aside, no, it's always wonderful because like the Council President, so many of us, we take a step back and we're just watching the kids have so much fun. We live vicariously through them as they're enjoying the day, but it gives a certain amount of fulfillment and satisfaction to see that the efforts that we put forth result in opportunities for families and children to enjoy the city. But also, we took the opportunity to share an additional resources for parents with children with special needs, as it was the last day of Autism Awareness Month, and we gave out, Council President, council members, over 20,000 items of brand new clothing. In their plastics with tags on them. We're extremely excited to do this. I had a relationship where I received a large donation of clothing, had it inventoried here during the spring break. Had high school students, members of our youth council come in, inventory everything, separate it, place them in different age groups, gender. We had clothing from 0 to 12 months, all the way up to adult clothing. We provided it out to children with special needs, their siblings, their families, and opened it up to all displaced families or families that have gone through struggles. We reached out to different agencies. I know that we have certified angels here. We also reached out to certified angels that recommended some families. We worked with the parent liaisons, different not-for-profit and faith-based institutions, including Head Start, which sent a lot of families. And we were extremely excited to have concluded with that initiative. I want to thank Councilwoman Mello, who came out to assist, along with members of the Board of Education, and Judith Sanchez, who spent 3 days with me in that building, giving out nonstop resources and assistance to all of those families. So it's been an exciting and productive couple of weeks. We've also had, in celebration of our holidays, a number of processions that went throughout our city, including St. Nicholas, Holy Trinity, St. Anthony's, Fatima, and as well as different religious activities like our Passover event at the park, Holly with our South Asian community at the park, at Third Ward Memorial Park. We have such a diverse and remarkable community. Our diversity is what makes us so vibrant. Our unity is our strength. And I'm so excited about the opportunity that the city consistently provides through public spaces to ensure that we recognize and assist and facilitate all communities of all backgrounds throughout the year. I also wanted to share, Council President, that we recently finished our Myrtle Avenue resurfacing, paving, and it was the very first street that we had announced we would do our bike lanes on in this initiative that we're presenting, as we have our new bike sharing program, which has been a huge success around the city. We now have the bike lanes, and we painted the parking spaces there. I mentioned before that we were doing it and completing it. That is completed, and we're moving forward now with a number of additional streets. We will bring a full report of all of the streets that we will continue to do. Coming up in May, and I do ask everyone watching to please go to our City of Passaic website or follow us on social media so you can see the announcements on our Memorial Day parade, which will be coming up. I'm working on it with our Deputy Mayor of Veterans Affairs, Minnie Austin, as well as on the Cinco de Mayo. I joined Deputy Mayor Jamie Delgado along with council from our Mexican consulate in New Brunswick for Puebla, Mariana Diaz Nagaro, and we were able to lay the wreath in front of the General Zaragoza statue. They were extremely excited because for well over a decade, that road was in disrepair, and the rain and the dirt from the park would constantly pool there, causing real issues. But we finished resurfacing, paving that completely, adding additional storm inlets, and putting curbing and raising of the road. So when they came in, they were shocked. I had to disappoint them and tell them, no, we did not do this for Cinco de Mayo. We actually planned this over a year ago for the community. The road will remain fixed every single day. It's not going back in disrepair right after the date, but it was a wonderful event. We had students from our high school, from our Ellen Ochoa school, all present there, and they were able to hear speeches from leaders within the Mexican American community, as well. Present was our superintendent of schools, our commissioners of the Board of Education, Abril Morales Garcia, representative from our Commissioner Leslie Zuniga, the board president, Judith Sanchez, and so many others who sent, as well as representation from our governor's office. I'm going to conclude my updates there for the evening. Thank you, Council President, members of the City Council, and public. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor. Any questions for the mayor? Mayor, the event, I don't know if it has had a specific name. Is this something which we will be looked upon on a regular basis?
Children's Day? So we've done Children's Day before, and we did it during COVID. We repeated it. We did it in the recreation center, and it was pretty big. It has never been as big as this year. This year, they had planned, I'll share with you, they planned for 200 people. Somewhere at the midway point, the police said, Mayor, the mayor said, the police said, Mayor, we have over 2,000 people. I said, oh, okay. We had over 2,000 people in the area, on lines around the corner participating. Now that includes families, the parents, and the children. towards the end, I was told it continued to increase, and we had a packed courtyard and city hall all the way to the end. But we stayed well beyond the 8 o'clock until every child got a toy. Every child and every parent received the flyer to share with parents of children with special needs or different capacities or abilities. We were able to provide the additional services to those families in the week that followed. So yes, we look forward to doing it next year. We're already starting now for toy donations. We begin very early to ensure that we have sufficient toy donations and book bags for book bag drives, turkeys. We're already sending out our letters, but we look to do this, as you know, Council President, along with the support of the entire City Council. We not only give gifts during December for Christmas, but we do Three Kings Day as we continue to be culturally sensitive and understand there are different observances and celebrations of holidays. Children's Day is unique. There's an International Children's Day, and we have such a diverse group of residents, as well as a large demographic that come from Hispanic backgrounds. So the April one is more of an international one. In the summer, there's one that's recognized here in our nation that isn't always celebrated, but in the city of Passaic for the last few years, we've been celebrating it, Council President.
Wonderful event. Seeing no questions from the council? With the council's permission, we are on Roman numeral 5 of our agenda, hearing of citizens. In accordance with the Open Public Meetings Act, NJSA 10:4-1 et sec, the council opens every public meeting for comments of the public. However, in accordance with NJSA 10:4-12, nothing in this act shall be construed to limit the discretion of a public body to permit, prohibit, or regulate the active participation in any meeting. Therefore, please be advised that the council will not entertain any comments from persons who communicate obscene material, make statements which are considered bias, intimidation, in which a person intends to intimidate an individual or group because of race, color, religion, gender, handicap, sexual orientation, or ethnicity, or makes comments intending to harass or speak any offensive language. The person who makes these statements will relinquish their allotted 5 minutes for their discussion. Is there anyone who would like to address the council? Sir, please. If we could have your name for the record.
My name is Alberto Rivera, and this is my wife, Lizette Rivera.
Could I ask a favor right now, and that is, could you please try to speak a little bit louder?
Okay.
It's difficult, the acoustics.
My name is Alberto Rivera, and this is my wife, Lizette Rivera. We've been residing in Passaic now going on 29 years. We have the pleasure of just adapting to a new change from where we used to. We used to live in the Bronx, and some of you may even know us because we've seen a lot of familiar faces. We attend a lot of galas and stuff like that. We're always involved. And I've seen a lot of people come and go, and I just want to say that the biggest and best improvements I've seen in Passaic have been since Hector Laura took office. And I just want to commend you on the work you've done. Keep up the good work, and you'll always have our support. I just wanted to say that. The reason I'm here is because I received a violation from my sidewalk on Albion Street. I live on 339 Van Houten Avenue. It's a corner house. Albion Street is a side street. And I spoke to Jonathan Bello at the office. He's the one that his number was on the violation. I spoke to DPW supervisor, I don't remember his name, and someone in engineering. Reason being is because I understand if the sidewalk is damaged, I am going to replace it. But the problem is the damage was done by the city trees. Many years ago, a dead tree was removed. And when they removed it, they did quite a bit of damage, which was never repaired. I did call a few times to have this resolved, but it never happened. And then a little further down, there's another tree, these huge oak trees, growing over the curb into the street, lifting up my sidewalk pretty high, causing a hazard. And I looked at the codes for trees and shrubbery in the city of Passaic, and I'm no tree expert and I'm not an arborist, but I do know one thing, that it is causing a problem. These trees have aggressive roots. They're if you look it up, you'll find out they're not the most recommended trees to put on a sidewalk curb because they do so much damage. And they tend to get squeezed by the concrete in the street, causing it to not grow properly, weakens the foundation. Mushrooms start to grow at the base, which it may indicate tree rot. Those are things I do know because you look them up. But I can't classify it as a hazardous tree, but it's potentially hazard according to what's written in the code, because it is obvious. It's a root that's lifting the sidewalk. And as far as I know, 29 years here, I was always told I cannot touch those trees because they're city trees. I even offered many years ago to remove a tree, and I would pay for it. They said, you cannot do that. Now they're telling me you can with a permit. That's news to me. So there's supposed to be a new ordinance that they want to. The problem is you have to lift the slab up to see if the root is causing the problem. And then the DPW in the past would come and classify it and say, okay, you can cut this root. But they're saying they're no longer doing that, that I have to hire a company to come and look at this and cut that. Why? How is it possible that a homeowner would be responsible for a tree that was never planted by me? It's not my tree. It never was. I was never allowed to touch it. So now they're saying they don't want the responsibility. I can't obviously lay new concrete over a root that's going to rip up my sidewalk again. I mean, my recommendation is now they say they can't remove a live tree, but the tree is a hazardous tree because it is leaning. Is it?
You have 1 minute more.
Oh, it's leaning, and I think potentially with a storm, because it has a weak base, it will fall and hit the house across the street. We've had quite a few trees fall on Albion Street in the past 12 years during Hurricane Sandy. One house got hit twice. And I've seen a few dead trees removed because we call and complain. We don't want these dead trees. They're a danger. But my recommendation is to remove the tree, to not cause any further damage. And then I can lay my sidewalk. I have a contractor ready. But I don't want this responsibility because it's not supposed to be my responsibility. It's not worded that way. And I hope you can do something about this.
Thank you.
Thank you. Rick, what is our procedure? All of us have experienced, some of us have experienced the same thing that the gentleman and his wife mentioned. I myself had a similar problem. What is the status? How do we treat these cases?
So the gentleman kind of discussed a little bit about it. We go out, we check the health of the tree. If we have to trim the branches to avoid any hazards, the DPW will trim the branches. We do not trim the roots because if you trim the roots, it actually makes it a greater hazard because it's a greater likelihood that the tree would fall. Some of these trees, we wouldn't plant these trees today either, but they've been there. Some of these things over 100 years. You have some of these trees that have been there, so we try to maintain them as best we could. We typically don't remove healthy trees that are on the block, right? By law, we're not allowed to touch a healthy
What
tree.
has occurred, Council President, especially recently with a lot of the work on the roads, and some of them are county roads, sometimes when utility companies have to do work and they have to redo the roads, they have cut some of the roots that go into the road. This may compromise the tree, and we see some of them obviously have come down during storms. So we can identify, we have a compelling reason, and we can justify why we would have to take down the tree. It is a bit of a arduous process. It's involved. We have to, again, justify why we want to take down a tree. As the business administrator articulated, many of these trees predated the sidewalks. So I think we would agree with the residents. These trees aren't the best to be placed in the sidewalk. We can look again at how we can better work with getting approval to remove some of these trees, especially considering that if we're requiring residents to redo the sidewalk and then the roots are only going to lift them up, it's unfair to the residents. I think their point that they didn't plant the tree, to a certain extent, the administration and members of DPW and government and council goes, we didn't plant it either 100 years ago. I'm not sure who went around planting all the trees, but the issues are being caused. I know through this council, an ordinance was passed that limits the height of trees that can now be planted, considering these situations and knowing that some of them are not the most conducive for maintaining property. These huge trees are no longer planted. It's what do we do with the ones that are existing? The truth is, it becomes a case by case. We have to present it to the attorney. We give them paperwork and say whether they pose a danger. Is it a public safety concern? Is it just immediate damage to the property? In certain cases, maybe we meet halfway if there's a responsibility of the city and the homeowner and see how we can join together to resolve it. In this case, we'll take the address, present it to the attorneys involved, the DPW, and then see if the state allows us to address the issue with the trees.
The mayor ended it with the state addressed the trees. So just for the public edification, because the councils, some of these ordinances are coming before us, are mandated by the state. And we had to pass a clear cutting ordinance because the state would not allow you to cut these trees down. So we were kind of forced to, so just, it's for the public edification. It's not like we don't understand the plight. And then I think one of the requirements is if you take one tree down, you have to put 4 back up there. Is that something like that? So there has to be like a specific replacement plan if one of those trees ultimately is decided that we can take it down.
The problem that I faced, if you'll allow me to be personal for a moment, is I had to replace 3 slabs of sidewalk. I think it was about $350 per slab.
You got a very good price.
I did that about 25 years ago. I'm here a little bit longer than the gentleman and his wife. And I had ended up having to do it a second time. And it seems to me that, if someone was walking on the sidewalk, I'm responsible for the sidewalk. If they want to sue, they can, and possibly successfully. Meanwhile, I can't do anything about it. I can't have the tree removed. If the roots are cut, the possibility is that the tree is going to fall on some car or some roof.
And if we do it as a city, we are now liable for that tree in that accident.
I think that I don't know where this should go. All I know is that I commiserate with the lady and her husband in terms of we need a solution here.
Council President, I think that you got to the root of the problem.
Oh, no.
And some residents can feel sometimes that they're barking up the wrong. I'm sorry, I'm a pun person, but in all seriousness.
We didn't know, Mayor.
Let me know if I have to leave. Leave. Trees. I'm sorry. I'll finish those. In all seriousness, I think that we should really identify how we can work together. There has to be some kind of funding, at least to address the cost of the tree so it doesn't fall on the resident and the property owner. But we may need some assistance from your other office, the Assembly's office, to try to expedite or at least make it easier in terms of when we identify a problematic tree or a root issue, because the truth is the bureaucracy, oftentimes the red tape, it becomes very difficult for the residents where they go, okay, if it's not the city's problem and we didn't plant the tree and we're being required to resolve the issue of the sidewalk by the city, then they're left with no other option but to either find the money or keep getting the violation. So if we can reach out to your office in terms of seeing how we can make that easier. But in terms of the case, we'll definitely refer it to the attorney. We'll have the engineers assess it. If they identify that any work done by the city or anything that was done, obviously, on the part of the property that belongs to the city and caused any issues, then of course we can move forward. The reason why we don't do it, I don't want to say arbitrarily, it's because it sets precedent. If we do it for one resident without having justification through our attorneys, making sure that the engineers have vetted it, then we open ourselves up to every single resident going, well, if you did their tree, do my tree, and then there's no way that we can afford to do that.
But surely there must be other municipalities throughout this state who face.
They all are under the same exact situation we are. So sometimes what happens is as they do a tree replacement schedule, like if we're gonna redo an entire block and we're doing, curbs and sidewalks, and some of these bigger trees have to come down, they're replaced with the smaller root, smaller trees, more urban trees
that, as an older urban city, we do have the beautiful amenities of the parks and these gorgeous trees that predated, like the mayor said, the sidewalks. But then also you have those issues that we run into. So our replacement plan does take into account these smaller roots, smaller trees, because it's not only just the roots. In some of the cases where the power lines are above ground, we've had issues where the branches are too big and hit the power line. So we're constantly looking at that replacement schedule. The issue is if they're healthy trees, even when we're doing a brand new street with sidewalks, if we get money, let's say from the state, we are precluded from removing that tree. In fact, we have to build the sidewalk around the tree. You will see certain blocks where you'll literally see a cutout around the sidewalk to the tree because they will not, the Department of Environmental Protection will not allow us to remove the tree. So it's not lack of trying, it's or lack of wanting.
lack of wanting. It's
Council President, one thing that I would like to explore, and we do have some home repair funds for income eligible families, potentially to explore whether that would extend to property in front of the home. We want to see if we can look into that, like through CDBG or any other funding that we may be able to assist, take some of the burden off of the resident if they apply special initiative. But again, the restriction, Council President, when it comes to the trees, there.
I wonder
Very
if we
difficult.
would ask the department, we'll plant 2 trees for every tree that we take down. It just seems to me that there needs to be some relief for people who live on these streets who are being affected and potentially open to lawsuit. Right? And it's great, it's wonderful, we're doing our job, well, you're doing our job, in so many areas that the gentleman and his wife mentioned. And we all feel that way about you, as I'm sure you know. But the bottom line is, where do they go?
Can we send, we'll send someone to assess their property specifically with the address. We'll do that tomorrow just to see what's going on so we have a better idea of what approach we should take.
Thank you as always, Mayor. Anyone else like to address the council? Excuse me, Councilman Love, forgive me, I saw your
No
light.
problem. Thank you, Council President. First, I want to thank the mayor and business administrator for such a thorough explanation of trees in the process. But I just wanted to address the other part of it because now our citizens has gotten fined. Will we collaborate with the courts in terms of it's under investigation rather than them having to show up and pay fines and then we find out it was something that we can do? Is that a possibility or is that a process that
We'll involve the code official as well as the department and let them know that we're sending engineering over there. We'll leave no stone unturned. I'm sorry. I said I would.
Thank you, man. Thank you.
We're not so green at this. We've done it. I'm sorry. That's enough.
I
Last one?
appreciate it.
Okay.
Is there anyone else who would like to address this council, please? Yes, sir.
My name is Joshua Goldman. I live at 185 High Street in Passaic. I've lived here for 8 years, and I appreciate the opportunity to speak in front of the council. Just to respond to the prior gentleman's comment, I've noticed a lot of homeowners putting in sidewalks that are too close to the tree. So even the contractors don't necessarily follow the best practices, and I don't know if that's a guidance issue from the city that can maybe provide to contractors. I'm not going to go as far as saying requirements, but it seems there's a lot of contractors that don't know how to properly provide enough clearance for trees to grow for 25 years without hitting the sidewalk. Although that's not the issue I'm here today. I'm here today for an issue.
Could I ask you to speak a little bit louder?
Sure.
Thank you.
My pleasure. I'm here for a separate issue, which is to talk about zoning, which is something that council oversees. And I live in the R1A district, which is approximately 21 city blocks within the city. And my main concern here is to speak to the fact that I believe the zoning is fairly outdated and doesn't really represent a growth strategy for the city. I think there's maybe a mismatch between the historical necessity of the zoning and maybe where it puts the city today in terms of its forward-looking development. I'm not here to say what the right answer is. Is it change the zoning? Is it maybe change the zoning district? Is it amend the nature of the zoning in terms of what it allows, but specifically, it's quite an odd district. And again, this is not specifically related to any, I'll call current applications. It's general. I actually approached council president about 4 years ago with the same issue. But to me, I'll give some background. I'm a real estate developer by trade. I've never heard of a zoning district that only allows single family houses and apartments, townhouses. That there's no kind of in between. It's quite odd. Like, what do you want? Do you want single family houses? Do you want apartments? And I can kind of understand if you look at the history of, hey, there were these big lots. No one wanted them at the time 30 years ago. This was an opportunity to kind of have urban redevelopment. But nowadays, there's certainly no shortage of desire for single family houses. They're quite in demand. There's not enough of them. And a development regime which encourages those to be taken down for larger buildings can still be understood, but there's kind of, again, this major gap between the single family houses and these large buildings. We're not talking, even 2-family units, not allowed. 3-story buildings, sometimes allowed. But it's just I think there's an opportunity for a collaborative effort between the city and the citizens to approach the issue and see if there is potentially a more strategic zoning designation or zoning allowance for this district and potentially for other districts as well. I don't know when the last comprehensive zoning review was done. I guess outside of my wheelhouse, I'm sure you guys are familiar, but that's basically the only reason I'm here today.
You mentioned that you have some knowledge and experience in development. Could you share with us if you know of what other urban areas do?
I work in New York City, Philadelphia, both in 2 different cities. Major urban things. I'm working on a 500,000 square foot project in the Bronx, a 1 million square foot project in Philadelphia. These are both major urban renewal projects, mixed use. One's adaptive reuse, one's ground up. Other projects, zoning. I've been in front of the New York City Department of Standards and Appeals, Board of Standards and Appeals now for 15 years on a certain project, which I'm not going to get into. But I'm familiar with zoning. I'm familiar with how it can help a city grow. I'm familiar with the limitations, the conflicts, the different parties and their different interests in how that develops. So as much as I'm a homeowner, I'm not coming in as like a NIMBY, I don't know what to do here. I have ideas. I'm happy to sit down and discuss them. Obviously, 5 minutes is not the time to do the detail work. But I know I've seen a lot of growth in the city, as our speaker mentioned, but under Mayor Laura, I see a lot of positive things. I love the new bike share. A lot of fun things that I think really do, put a forward-thinking look on the city and its growth. And I think just zoning is a big piece of that. And I think that a look that involves not the neighbor, the residents and kind of having a voice within their neighborhoods of how to help a cohesive vision for the city and how they can grow both commercial, residential, the services, the parks, et cetera. I just think there's an opportunity to take a new look. Again, since I've been here, there hasn't been a comprehensive look that I'm aware of, but many people here have been here for 29 or more years, and it doesn't appear that there's been major kind of reviews.
His time's up.
So come on, please don't move. Councilor Love?
Yeah, I just, first of all, I appreciate it. I love to, I'm a student forever, so I love to learn new things. But I'm just curious because you also talked about there's been tons of redevelopment here and a lot of good things going on. But then you also said our zoning is outdated. So I'm just curious about what are you referencing to when you say outdated?
Well, specifically, I'm focusing on what I'll call mixed use, the ability to do large scale mixed use projects in the appropriate places, things that can really bring a mix of income levels, and to where the services where they can be provided, transportation, shopping, et cetera. That makes a big difference. If you have a building in downtown Passaic where there's shopping everywhere and there's great bus service, et cetera, right? That can really help people grow, their families grow, they can get access to jobs, to shopping, et cetera. So there is definitely a benefit that comes with it. I don't think there's a cap on the number of people per se. It's you want to make sure that you're doing it in a way that provides both the services for them. But the capitalism is the definition is that people are paying for benefits that they're getting. So growth happens when people find the value is being provided to them. So that it's kind of finding that right match. And there is obviously the regulatory and kind of setting a framework so that there's not just open season and everyone does what they want to do. But there's guidance. That's really what the zoning code is supposed to be, is guidance.
It's interesting that you use that specific example because we've done that, right? And we have that. That's in place. It's specifically what you're talking about. That's why I was curious. Have you had opportunity to look at the zoning?
I've looked at the zoning. I have not necessarily, if there's other like studies or plans or something like that, I have not looked at those. But yeah, I'm familiar with the zoning code itself.
I encourage you to look at the comprehensive plan that the mayor and his administration had put out just a few years ago. And I think it's going to cover, you'll find that it covers some of the things that you would wish to have covered.
Great. No, I'm glad to hear. Again, focusing on the R1A zoning itself, again, I'll look at it and see how it references it or whatever, but I have a hard time seeing how the current unlimited height, 100 unit per acre density within that 21 block area, how that fits in, but I'm happy to look into the report.
Councilman Monk?
Yeah, just to cut to the chase, Mr. Gold was being very polite, and just for the benefit of our council, what Mr. Gold was referring to is an application before the planning board this week, where it's proposed 198 units, 14-story high building, 3 stories of parking and 11 stories of apartments, right smack behind homes. So just visualize if you have your single family home, okay, and literally right behind your house, well, you'll be having 11 to 14-story high building. People feel violated. So you basically lost all your privacy. It doesn't fit in. It just doesn't fit in with a residential area. We have single family homes, and behind it is 11 to 14-story high buildings.
In my backyard.
Right. So again, this is what Mr. Golden is referring to is a planning where residential stays residential. Single family homes has the look of single family homes, not the ever row. And then you have all of a sudden a Taj Mahal behind it. I think that's what Mr. Golden was referring to.
Okay.
I wanted to also clarify, I appreciate Councilman Monk bringing that up, but from my experience in development, I'm also very cognizant that the council's role is very different than the planning board's role. And I'm not here in any capacity related to that specifically because any attempt that the city council would do to do something which could be interpreted as meant to be directed at that application would be inappropriate, which is why I'm specifically wasn't bringing it up. As far as I'm here, I'm talking about the person on the 2 blocks over who could have the same issue, which isn't in front of anybody at the time, but I still feel nothing to do with my own backyard privacy, but at the same time recognizing that for the same person 2 blocks over, again, any of these 21 blocks within the city could have the same problem, which to me, I'm bringing up the general.
As I said, you're being very polite. I was just explaining.
No, I understand.
That's all. Okay, that's why I said it. Okay.
Council President?
Mr. Fernandez, our master planner.
Sure. That's what I was just going to refer to our business administrator wanting to share a little bit about our master plan and some of the approaches that we've taken recently. But I think to Councilman Monk's point, I'll be very short. I think the clerk may have some opinions one day that you may want to share with our councilman about that particular scenario. I think she experienced something similar. So.
And Councilman.
So we just redid our master plan. So that was something that's a little different than New York City that's required. We looked at every zone. We looked at every zoning district. Zoning changes were made. Significant amount of zoning changes were made to update it. But the question at hand is specifically the R1A zone and the purpose of the R1A zone. So I could tell you that the R1A zone permitted uses are your single family and your townhouses. And a study goes way back from when the Carlton Towers, the presidential towers, the towers were constructed. And the idea and the reason this exists is because of their proximity and this radius of the R1A zone to the train station. So what happens is understanding somewhat of what the gentleman discussed about changing the character of the neighborhood and things of that nature, they made it as a conditional use, right? So it's not permitted outright. There are certain conditions that have to be met for you to be able to avail yourself of the high-rise, let's call it the high-rise component of the ordinance, which would allow certain individuals at certain times to assemble enough parcels that then would comply with the ordinance for them to be able to avail themselves of this conditional use. So I know there's a current application. This is not a run-of-the-mill, it always happens. We're going to have high rises all over our 1A zone, right? For this to happen, there has to be a collection, an assemblage, because one single-family lot is grossly undersized to be able to avail yourself of this, right? The current project is almost 2 acres, right? Just under 2 acres. And there was an assemblage of these properties before the application could even be presented before the board. So understanding that this, not talking about any merits of the case, that's completely inappropriate. I'm talking specifically about the zone and why the zone exists. It is only 2 zones in the entire city of Passaic permit something like this, and it's in our R3 multifamily zone, again, still as a conditional use, not permitted, and in our R1A zone to take, and the R1A zone specifically was to take advantage of the access to the train station, but keeping the permitted uses in a way that is still cohesive and the same character of the neighborhood. So that's why it only allows single-family homes and townhouses in the area. But understanding the need for mass transit, and the gentleman literally said it in his discussion about getting access to jobs and walking to mass transit and all of this, then that is why that section of the ordinance exists, and it's only based on conditional uses. The reason it's going to the planning board is because that applicant would have to meet every single one of the conditions, which are not simple conditions. So let's start with that. It's not like, oh, anyone could just go to the planning board and meet it. They have to compile all of this before they can even apply, right? Now, application is just one part of it, right? Because when this was created, and I was lucky enough to read all these things, that's how I go to sleep at night, right? From all these years, understanding that there were certain conditions that the board has to analyze, whether it be a zoning board if they don't meet all the conditions, or the planning board if they do meet all the conditions, such as infrastructure capacity, right? Roadway capacity, traffic capacity of those roadways if they're not main thoroughfares, right? So those are things that the board has to analyze in these cases that are the, I don't want to say subjective, and hopefully it's objective, but there's that component of the process where these studies have to be presented so that not only the board can hear it, but the public can hear it. And then if they need to refute any of that testimony, they have the ability to do so. Right? So I just wanted to let the council know this is not just a as of right permitted use. It's a conditional use that has certain conditions that have to be met before they can be permitted. So I'm hoping that clarifies, just so the board understands why that exists and how that is. Again, I don't know the case. I don't know ultimately the testimony, but in generic terms, all these things have to be presented. The board has to analyze it before they make a determination, such as Councilman Monk's impact to the community, the traffic, the road network, the sewer capacities, and is there any way, because another thing is, under the state law, is there any condition that could be set to satisfy that negative component of the project?
You had said earlier that there are only 2 sites in the entire city that are available?
Zones.
2 zones.
Yes. And that's the R3 zone and the R1A zone are the only 2 that have a conditional use that would permit a, let's call it a high-rise building.
And how big are?
So you're going to need to assemble at least over an acre. So that's why it doesn't really happen often in the city of Passaic, and that's why you haven't seen a high-rise since the towers and the presidential towers were built. You really don't see that happen. Because we are blessed in the city of Passaic that the value of land for us is significant, especially in the R1A zone. A single family home could run you $1 million in the R1A zone, right? You're not going to knock that. You're not going to collect several $1 million homes. It just won't be financially feasible. So you don't see that happen quite often. So it'll be in unique instances that something like this will come up. But again, it doesn't mean that this unique instance is the right instance for the high rise. It just means that whoever put this together met the criteria, right? So I just, I don't want to get specific because, we won't know until the board hears the case.
So I understand that the case is being presented, I believe at tomorrow night's planning board meeting.
That's correct.
In order to present, would the applicant need to show that he or she owns the necessary ancillary?
So it's interesting. No, they do not. So what they need to show is that they have agreement from those parties they haven't bought the parcel from, that they're allowed to go to the board. So in a board process, let's say we're negotiating the purchase of your home and I want to convert your home to townhouses, let's just say, right? That could be part of my due diligence where you sign off on your application that you're allowing me to go to the board because my purchase of your property is dependent on that approval. So that is permissible under the state of New Jersey. So you don't necessarily have to own it, but you have to have permission from the owner to go to the board.
And one would assume that there'd be a time frame.
Yes. So in the state of New Jersey, every application has, every board for a variance scenario, I'm not going to get into the nuances, some are 95, some are 45, but generically, if there's a variance, it's 120 days. So a board has 120 days to act. That's the board. But it never ends up being that way because let's say the hearing takes longer, the applicant will concede and say we'll waive the 120 days to the next meeting because they want to put their full case on and not force the board to act.
Make a decision.
Right. So the board has the obligation to act, not the applicant, right? So the board has to act within the time frame of that. If it's just the site plan with no variances, it's 95 days, but you'll get the gist.
So in terms of citing deficiencies, that would have to be done within that time frame.
Right. So what happens is the obligation, the burden of proof is on the applicant, not the board. So the applicant can take as long as they need to put all their proofs on the record, as long as they are waiving this time period because they haven't concluded their testimony. So it's not an uncommon thing. The applicant says, I haven't finished my testimony. I'll carry the case to the next meeting and we'll waive, we call it the tolling of time. We'll waive the tolling of time till the next meeting.
But at some point, the board can say, okay, we need to move on with this, right? It can't just.
Yeah, if the testimony is concluded, the testimony is concluded. But sometimes, so what happens is sometimes, let's say there's a highly contested application and the opposition brings their own attorney. Well, then you understand that now you're doubling or tripling the length of the meeting because you have to everybody has the right to cross-examine every single witness that comes up, including the public. And then at the end of the meeting, everybody's permitted to make their comments for or against the application. So contentious applications, I remember there was one when I first started many years ago. It was called the Roadmasters. Did anybody remember Roadmasters?
Michael Ranieri.
Yeah, it took, when I tell you over a decade, it took over a decade. It went back to it went to Superior Court, came back. It was a decades-long case. It was Roadmasters on Oak Street.
What was the ultimate disposition?
The court said we had to allow them to have the tow truck company there. That's how it ended after 10 years.
Thank God, Mayor, those are not the issues that we have to deal with.
I mean, hopefully
That was a nice lesson on zoning. Yeah, it was interesting, very interesting.
Well,
Appreciate that. Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay.
Any other questions that Mr. Goldman might be able to answer for us? Mr. Goldman, just out of curiosity, we understand that you practice in New York, as you had said, so I don't know if you're in fact, I know you're not as familiar as Mr. Fernandez is, who's literally a walking encyclopedia and regarded as such in the entire state of New Jersey. But would you have any thoughts further to his in terms of this discussion?
No, I certainly appreciate both his historical knowledge and obviously his expertise in the subject matter. You know, and in recognizing the goals, I still think that there are maybe more certain ways to accomplish them, more nuanced ways to accomplish them, more measured ways in terms of, you know, gradients of height, et cetera. In order, you know, normally you'd have some kind of, you know, kind of gradations. Just you're building up from single family to, you know, 2, 3, 4-story apartment buildings, 5, 6, 7, 8, whatever, up to a higher density, which, you know, again, understanding the access to the train is important. So obviously having those, you know, that access for all really, right, is an important goal. So again, I think part of what I brought up at the beginning was just the kind of, it's single family or high rise, and there's nothing in between, right? By code, there's nothing in between. I mean, obviously a developer could do a 6-story building, but you know, the only allowed things are really the single family or the higher rise. Again, townhouses, you know, kind of, but that's the same height as a single family house. So I do think that there's opportunities to kind of look at in between ways of accomplishing kind of the similar goals that can provide access to the transportation, but also kind of more measured, you know, delineations between different residences.
You had said that there are 4 variances that are needed. I'm sorry. You had mentioned that there were 4 variances that are required. 2 have been accomplished, I believe. Did I get that right?
I'm not sure what you're referring to.
I have a tendency of not being sure, period. So,
So
if
much.
there are no other questions for the gentleman, thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
It's been
Appreciate the time.
very helpful and instructive.
Thank you.
And if Mr. Fernandez gets sick for more than a week, we might call you in to take over. But just for that week.
He said just for that week.
I'm bringing the candy and the chocolate and everything else.
Council President, I'm sorry. I believe the gentleman had shared that he wanted to provide some recommendations. Was that, I wasn't hearing because I was conferring with the business administrator for the council. Okay.
All right, we're good? Good. Thank you, Mayor. And Mr. Fernandez, thank you for accepting all of our drubbing. It is done with profound regard and respect.
Absolutely.
Even though you were talking to Councilman Monk when I gave you those compliments. Is there anyone else who wishes to address the council, please?
Yeah, you're great.
Yes, sir.
He said you're great.
Yeah.
Okay.
Good evening. Parker Brown Jr., 247 Summer Street. First question I have is a personal one. In the ordinance, we have a ordinance about fences. It says that your fence can be up to 4 feet in height, but then it also says that it needs to be uniform. So is it 4 feet or does it need to be uniform? I asked that question in particular because my house is on the corner and I really wanted to put a higher fence on the corner, but then it said 4 feet. But then when I looked down the street, I seen a neighbor with a wooden fence that is taller than me, and I'm 5'10". So, and it goes all around, and he lives on the corner as well. So I just want to make sure that if it's 4 feet, that it's 4 feet. That's question number 1. Second question is about our oldie but goodie, parking. I know we're never going to actually like get a hold of parking. There's a lot of people who drive, but there was a couple of women who asked a question, and I said, look into it. They get off work in the later part of the evening, sometimes at 10. Even tonight, we have a basketball practice. It's kind of 9. They get out, have to drive around for about an hour to find parking. Now, I said it was kind of my fault because I did ask for some more parking enforcement over the later. I did ask for that. So I said I would come down here and speak about that.
Did you tell them?
I
Did you tell them?
I did ask for that. I said it was my
It was better
fault.
when he was speaking, Mr. Parker. I don't know.
I really did. I said it was my fault. And being so, I said that I would come down and speak about that. The reason why I said so is because you can't park on the corner and leave it to be dangerous. Even though it's nighttime and then there's less people that are on the road, it does create a hazard. And in these particular areas, some of these ladies have to park in different areas, which is a little further from their house. This is the part that I really want to speak about. There are people in these neighborhoods who don't live there, and they're lingering. So that's why these ladies park closest to where they can, closest to their home, and they rather risk a ticket than getting mugged or robbed. So then that's why I'm here to ask that question. What do you propose that we do on that? Because I can't just walk around the entire neighborhood at night, even though I try to. And I know you have a job to do, and I know that parking enforcement has a job to do. As I said to them, they might have come around your area at one time, and then they drove around the city of Passaic to another area. I'm not sure how many you have overnight, and I don't want you to tell me because that might be, a way that people can get around it. But those are those two particular, those are those particular issues. I don't have anything else today. See, that was easy, not so bad. Thank you.
Don't go. Your first question, sir, was about, you've got a corner property.
Yes.
How high can the fence go?
Corner properties are a little interesting because they're a corner property. So you're allowed 4 feet in the front, 6 feet in the rear. The uniformity is it all has to be a wood fence. It all has to be a chain link fence. That's the uniformity, not the uniformity in height. The height is dependent on the location of the fence. So in our code, it's 4 foot in the front, 6 feet in the rear. Depending on where it is on a corner property, you're usually 4 feet on the corner. And then you also have a site distance clearance where you can't put the fence up within, there's like a little formula you have to do in the triangles. There's a 20-foot site clearance you have to keep so that when people pull up to the corner, they can see if you're doing a solid fence. But the uniformity is the fence type, and the height is dependent on the location of the fence. So in certain areas of your home, you will be able to go up to 6 feet. Usually on the frontage, however, is 4 feet. So the majority on a corner property, the majority of the fencing is going to be 4 feet versus, let's say, an inland property where, the front will be 4, then from the porch back, it's 6 feet. Right.
Which begs the question, is the side considered part of the front?
It's
or
on
the back?
it's street frontage.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Just as a question for the gentleman's edification, can I plant trees that grow bigger than 4 feet or 6 feet?
You can.
And there's no restriction.
Yeah, well, I mean,
Except if the roots come over.
there's the safety site clearance issues.
Right.
Some people get those bushes,
They
those
do
shrubs,
get bushes and
which grow up
shrubs.
to
Well, there's a
7,
tree
8
on the
feet
corner
as
of
a
my
fence.
house.
I wouldn't go
Bring that one
spreading that
up.
around too
But
much.
just because many people use our providers, whatever they are, as a natural fence. The second question the gentleman asked was in terms of people who work and come back late in the evening from their work. What do they do?
Particularly 10 o'clock at night, 11 o'clock at night.
Council President, we've had this issue. So we brought in some overnight parking enforcement officers. So we're just going to be very candid here. We were going through a period, especially after the pandemic, where we were seeing a lot of commercial vehicles taking up residential parking overnight. Some of the trailers were staying. So there was an outcry from the community. Where's the enforcement overnight on this parking? We're losing parking space. Some individuals were parking other commercial vehicles, not the big ones, landscaping, otherwise, trucks, tow trucks, things like that. So we decided to bring in overnight patrol enforcement officers. When they go around, they identify any issues, any violations. I recall when I worked at the hospital, I was at the hospital for 15 years. I worked the night shift, came home a little after midnight. After midnight, you wouldn't find parking, so you parked right at the corner where the stop sign was. And then you got up early in the morning at 6 a.m. and you moved it before the police officers came along. Now the police officers or the patrol enforcement officers are going around at all hours of the night. It helps in terms of the commercial vehicle. It has become difficult for the residents. We've had conversations with the chief. He's aware of it regarding our approach. There's less traffic on the road overnight. Obviously, the idea of not parking near the corners because you can obstruct the visibility of the driver. If you're trying to make a turn, you may not see oncoming traffic, and that could cause accidents. Overnight, there's less vehicles. However, the law remains in effect 24 hours a day. There may be a vehicle. We can speak to our patrol enforcement officers, but we cannot direct our officials to not enforce the law, because if they see something and they don't respond and there's an accident, you may give a legitimate opportunity for someone to say your officer was there, they never wrote tickets, they never enforced it, and an accident occurred. The city calls this. In regards to regulating areas, the council working along with my administration, we have identified certain areas in the city where perhaps residential parking permits can be beneficial. We found them in our areas closest to the borders of other municipalities, like in our downtown area, where you go into Bergen County, where some individuals, because there was overnight residential permit parking, they were parking in the city of Passaic. We can assess the area itself and see if that would be a solution. If not, we can go with the approach that we have been doing of painting parking spaces. That seems to be something, and it seems like the gentleman is receptive to that. That seems to help, because one of the other issues that we have is individuals will park leaving a certain amount of space in between vehicles, where any reasonable individual walks on the block and goes, if those 4 cars were closer together, you would have opened up 3 more parking spaces. So if we can get the road again, you're saying what street?
This would be Burgess.
Burgess?
Summer, Burgess.
We just did Myrtle Avenue, which is right there, and we painted all the roads. We can send our engineer and our DPW to assess those areas. It is our goal to try to take this approach and broadly apply it everywhere in the city where we can. Some roads are more conducive for our initiatives than others. The angled parking work on wider roads, obviously, and we get an increase. Just this weekend, we had an initiative on Gregory Avenue behind the gymnasium of the high school, where because of an event, we had temporary angled parking. 100 cars fit there that otherwise didn't. Now, we didn't come up with it, but watching this as I went to the event, I said, this would be great. So now we're going to send our engineer to see if this would be a viable project. If we can see if we can have angled parking there. So we'll look at Burgess as we're going to continue to look at streets throughout the city to see where we can maximize parking opportunities. Again, in terms of regulating parking, but the overnight, the shift. The reason why I shared this, and I know many of my colleagues have felt the same, because sometimes we've been in meetings till 10 or 11 o'clock at night. You get home and realize the prime spaces have been taken, and you have to drive around and look for something. So we can try to regulate that to see if that can assist, and then perhaps look at the opportunity of maybe enforcing or regulating specific parking that's designated for the residents, and see if we can perhaps explore that.
Just so we're clear, if I can't have a higher fence, that guy's got to take that fence down, right? You can't have a 6-foot fence. I just want to make sure. No, he's already his fence is already 6 foot high already.
Well, again, Council President, and the questions go through the Council President during council meetings, so that's why I'm directing it to the Council President. But what I want to share is that we would have to identify where that person's fence is. Again, it's 4 feet in the front, 6. We call it the mullet fencing ordinance. It's a hairstyle. In the front, longer in the back. No, all right. The jokes only get worse as the night. Thank you for getting it. But the 6 feet is allowed in the back, so it depends if the portion of the property that you're seeing is the back of their home.
Just like mine.
It's right in the front of the home.
Summer and Spruce.
And if it's over 6 feet, then that's something that we can.
Than me. I'm 5'10".
You can definitely send that out to our code office. We'll send an inspector over there.
You can't miss it. That's it. That's all I have.
We're good.
Appreciate you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else like to address the council?
Council President.
I'm sorry, Councilwoman.
Yeah, Mayor, I think we brought up the pilot program that we implemented on the other side of town with the permits. I think that area will definitely benefit from it, because we've also gotten complaints from residents regarding the auto body shops
It's right
that
next to
utilize. So I
Clifton.
think that will definitely be something that we can explore for that.
Councilwoman, I think you're
residents.
correct, and that's an excellent point. It's not only in proximity to the border to Clifton, that area, because Burgess goes into Clifton, just like Summer Street and Highland. So you get a lot of the parking right into it, as well as we have quite a number of mechanic shops. And even though with the council support, we were able to pass ordinances, and we're still exploring with our attorney how far we can go with restricting mechanics from placing the vehicles on the street. Just to give a little bit of perspective, what happens is a mechanic, an auto shop, they should only be receiving as many cars as they can store within their property. But, and I believe the gentleman that spoke a little bit earlier mentioned that we are capitalistic. siding. You don't want to turn away a customer. If you can only fit 4 cars and you have 12 customers, you go, leave your car here and we'll take care of it. And that's why the mechanic keeps it for an additional 2 weeks, because it's on the street rather than having them stored in its property. We identified that issue and we've gone to them and said, you should not keep vehicles. Technically, if the vehicle is registered as a license and does not pose any danger, meaning it isn't crashed, doesn't have any jagged pieces hanging out, it's very difficult for us to tell them you can't leave it in that area. So we may want to explore further with the attorney in that specific area because of the extenuating circumstances or the unique needs, whether putting something that would speak to that would provide some relief to the residents there, because we have, I think, just in that area alone, about 4 auto shops that have a lot of vehicles on the road all of the time. Yeah.
This is zoning that could benefit from that.
And there's already precedent for specific zones implemented, so we can look at it and present it to the council to see if the council would support it in that area.
I have someone's light on.
Yeah, that was mine. But both this brilliant mind and that brilliant mind stole my thunder, because I wanted to make sure Mr. Brown knew that it was a lot of things done for parking in that area, and the mayor touched on it in terms of the shops. Now, the auto shops, the mayor was modest about it. It's being enforced, and we want to thank the police. It's being enforced because the auto shops do have kind words for us every now and then when we see them. So that's the first thing. The second thing is, Councilwoman talked about the permits in that area. I think it's a prime area also because we get a lot of complaints. Although Mr. Brown talked about at night, we're talking about in the daytime because of school parking and people taking parks from residents that live right there, and particularly some of our elders who need to be right in front of their house without handicap plates. So that's a great suggestion, Councilwoman.
Thank you. Anyone else like to address the council, please?
Good evening. My name is Yosef Wolf. I want to thank the council and Mr. Gold and Councilman Monk for the sensitivity to the agenda tomorrow night in the planning board. I myself did not know how something was so tall and monmouth and huge was getting approved, and I appreciate the clarity. For accuracy's sake, the R1 zone is actually the zone that abuts the train stations on both sides, not the R1A zone. So it seems might be other reasons that the R1A zone allows multifamily. About the ticketing at night, I do appreciate the candid nature of the mayor to present it the way he did. It is very, very painful. There's not enough parking. The city chooses, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, but they don't necessarily enforce the one unit per one family, 2 units per 2 family, and parking is extremely, extremely difficult in many areas in Passaic. And I myself and my neighbors have been getting many, many tickets over the past month or so, and it's extremely expensive and painful. I do know that when I've called the city about other issues with parking, I was told by the police department that there are some things that they enforce and some things they do not enforce. So I appreciate the mayor's being precautious about liabilities, but the police department clearly has policies in place, and they do seem to have the ability to look away at things, and not everything could be considered, if it's unmarked, a crosswalk and things like that. I also want to say, Councilman Love, speaking about handicap and people that are elderly, there are many people in the city who are parents of young children, having to park multiple spaces away from your own house with children, young children, sometimes having to cross streets after picking them up from school with groceries. Permit parking seems to be a requirement that I think all zones should be equal, and that's what I'd say to that. Thank you.
Anyone else wish to address the council, please?
Joe Conoscenti, good evening. Council President, I noticed the last couple weeks ago, the city started painting curbs like they normally do for the summer. But what I'm noticing, they're painting over grass and weeds. So question to this is that the next time they do curbs, they should clean the area before they paint the curbs. Because it doesn't look nice when you got yellow paint on the grass. You know, it makes it look ugly. My next question is, Council President, is what could be done on Irving Place with the cars that's parked on the half on the sidewalk and half on the road? Is my question. What could be done with this? Because you got apparatus, emergency vehicle, and when you got 10, 15 cars lined up, they can't get through. And sometimes the corners are blocked in that area. Now you're starting to get homeowners are parking on the street there. And there's, at the one end, there's about 5, 6 signs. At the beginning of it, there's only one sign that's maybe almost 50 feet down where nobody can even see it. But something needs to be done on that block. What? I don't know. My second question is, there was an ordinance, as far as I know. There was another one, I think by the state it was last year, about these bicycles. I don't see them much enforced. They're still all over the sidewalk. There's no license plates on them. Get an answer on that. My next question is, maybe the chief can answer this one if he can. Officer Robert D. Strong, that has a monument by across from 14 Hudson Street, that's right across from the Boys Club, that it needs a foundation underneath the monument, because eventually it's going to sink into the ground. They had it when they had it in the park when it was named after Robert D. Strong. The park was named after him, but somebody seemed to take it out of the park. But if you take that slab of concrete and put it on the outside and put the monument on top of it, it's all common sense. My next question is, I would like to know this summer, maybe the mayor might be able to answer it. I've been following this up. Spruce Street, on top of the 100 stairs, is the park. There's a monument that's named Latona and Griffin. And I just wondering if there's any plans for this summer to have the stone put back up there. I know last I found out that they were supposed to contact the family. So I don't know if there's anything in the works. I'd like to get an update on that. I just found out the other day, the old tennis court, that's going to be up for auction. That's my question there. The other one that I have is by the basketball court on Madison Street. There's an opening fence before you get to Myrtle Avenue. There's a rock there that had a plaque on it that was named after the 7-year-old girl that was murdered and raped. Now the plaque is missing. So I don't know if anybody knows about it. These are my questions tonight.
I hopefully have most of them, if not all of them, down. You asked about
Malfunction.
you asked clarity on, what was it, Sherman?
What's that?
You had asked initially about clarity on, no, I'm sorry, I've got these confused. I'm sorry, I've got yours confused with Mr. Wolf. Your first question was about the curb painting,
Right.
and the fact that it might not look right when the
Well,
leaves
you
are
got the
blown
growing
away.
of the grass and weeds. Yeah,
I-
that should be taken out.
I know they make a concerted effort to do it. We'll have to just remind them a little bit more in the future. And the number of cars parked, and in fact, not cars parked, but the bicycles, the
No, the
motorized.
cars are never in place.
Motorized vehicles. Chief, what is done with the motorized vehicles, the scooters and all that stuff?
No, he's talking, now he's on e-bikes. He jumped the line.
Okay, they shouldn't be on the sidewalk.
Every day.
If we see that, I mean, bring it to our attention, Joe, and we'll send somebody over there and rectify that situation. But those those electric bikes shouldn't be on the sidewalk. If they're stationed properly, it's considered a bicycle, but if it's laying out, it's obstructing the passage of the sidewalk, then
They're
that's an issue.
riding the bikes on the sidewalk is the issue.
Riding bikes?
No, the e-bikes
Right.
all over the sidewalk. Every day they're out there. How are you gonna call it in? By the time they come, they
I
got.
think this is a matter that is being looked upon by the state, if I'm not mistaken, Chief.
Yeah,
Yes. No
It's
doubt.
for common policy, so perhaps we should be looking to the Attorney General for his determinations on this. It's beyond our competence. Every community has it, and for us to single out Passaic and saying that we should know more is just not realistic. While you're there, Chief, if you wouldn't mind, the gentleman mentioned about the Strom Memorial.
I think
I assume the uniform
the
service.
police statute, but I would, if I may,
It's the
Council President, I don't think,
PBA.
in terms of whether or not the foundation has been structurally compromised, whether it's going to go, and I know that the monument has been there for a number of years and has never sunk. It wasn't necessarily moved as opposed to, or rather, a fence was created to close off the park, and the monument stayed outside of the fence. The fence was intended to create a conducive area for children with special needs that would be closed off, as parents often have a concern of a flight risk when they bring children who may be identified as autistic or having special needs into playgrounds. It's an approach we took in all of our parks. I know the gentleman has often shared his concern of the monument. We can send the engineer to go assess it. I know that the gentleman stated that it will probably sink down. That's not the reports that we've received. We'll send engineering. If they concur, then we'll address that.
Good deal. Thank you, Mayor. I tried to figure out what else you were asking, Mr. Conoscente, and I wasn't too successful, unfortunately. Were there other points that you had?
Yeah.
The monument at the top of the 100 steps will be going. We already have it. We already have the monument. What we're doing is coordinating. We've been in communication with the family, Latonia Griffin. We redid the entire 100 steps. We put up new lighting. We put a fitness park. And it was our goal all along to put up the monument to honor the fallen firefighters. They are aware. The last step is to identify exactly where it's going to go. Council President, with myself and the chief will go out and do that this week.
Good deal, Mr. Conoscente.
That's it. You didn't answer the other two. Huh? You didn't answer about the missing plaque, right?
You're right, because it is under investigation.
Oh. Who's investigating it?
The council has a special committee. Anyone else like to address the council? Seeing no hands, is there a motion to close public hearing?
Second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Councilman Monk?
Yes.
Councilman Love?
Yes.
Councilman Mello?
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz?
Yes.
Councilman Garcia?
Yes.
Councilman Colom Montañez?
Yes.
And Council President Shear.
Yes, thank you. We are on the agenda, Roman numeral 6, ordinances for second and final reading. Hearing is required. Number 1, proposed ordinance 2481-25, an ordinance adopting Article 5, lithium-ion battery safety regulations, to Chapter 139, fire prevention of the Code of the City of Passaic. Is there a motion, please, to open public hearing? Motion.
Second.
And second, roll call to open public.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colon Montañez,
Yes.
and Council President Sher.
Yes, thank you. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, the council will be considering proposed ordinance 2481-25. Is there anyone who would like to address the council on this item and this item only? Mr. Connolly. Your name for the record, sir.
Joe Conoscenti. My question to this, is this to do with the e-bikes? These batteries? Yes, no? With the e-bikes, these batteries, lithium batteries? Okay, so what is this about?
The
Oh,
ordinance.
the
what is it?
ordinance.
Unregistered lithium batteries pose a real danger as they spontaneously combust and go into flames. We've had to respond to a number of fires, which obviously exhaust the resources, and the firefighters can cause loss of life. So we're looking to regulate this further to ensure that our stores can't sell unregistered lithium batteries, that we have a way to hold people accountable. Where you bought it from? Was it a faulty battery? Are you plugging it in inside? Most people don't know when they buy these batteries and they're using them for bikes or otherwise. You can't plug them in inside of your home to a regular outlet. It's a danger. So we vetted this through our attorney. Our attorney can speak in more detail to it, Council President, if you want some more information, but it is intended to protect the public.
I don't believe we need background at this point.
My next question on this, if you have an apartment building and someone has an e-bike, so they're prohibited by charging the batteries, like he made a statement. Is it true?
I'm going to rule that that is not on the ordinance.
It's still got to do with the battery.
You're right, and
I'm
so
asking
does
you-
including the battery in my cell phone, but that's not being discussed in this
But I'm
ordinance.
asking you,
On the
this
ordinance-
ordinance, can a apartment building stop the tenant by having the bike in the building with this battery to charge it? Because the battery is causing danger. So if you're making an ordinance, it's got to be anybody that's using these batteries, they can't use them
Madam Attorney?
by your ordinance.
This ordinance is safety regulations, and it's
That's
geared
what I'm
for
telling
the,
you.
if you let me finish, please. It's mainly geared for the storage of the batteries, the charging of the batteries,
Right.
with a focus on the retail stores that are selling these. There's the requirement that they be proper UL batteries, because there's a lot of makeshift batteries that people are using, and they are not permitted. It provides for specialized storage units for retail bike sellers, for them to store them. Certain fire safes for the batteries themselves, for the batteries to remain in uncharged states, status while they're being stored. So this is, and it provides for the disposal of the batteries. This is not geared towards the residential storage and use of e-bikes. This is safety in response to significant time being spent by the fire department going to retail sellers to make sure that we keep everybody safe.
Well, the same thing that I'm saying. If I purchase a bike today and tomorrow in the apartment, I'm charging the battery and the building burns down, by the time you do this ordinance, how are you gonna know where the battery was bought or the bike was bought? You're not gonna know
Well,
nothing.
Where the battery is
You're not gonna know
bought is
nothing.
not
So
necessarily
you can-
relevant. You're talking about, I think, another safety issue, which
It's the same
is,
story.
which is
Mr.
the,
Conoscente, why don't you let the lady speak?
which is the charging of e-bikes within apartment buildings, which may be yet another issue. But this particular ordinance, I think you're saying is we should have even an additional ordinance, which is certainly something that could be considered. But this particular ordinance is geared for retail sales, storage and general disposal for everyone of batteries and who can use what kind of batteries. So no one can use a non-UL or certified battery. And I think you're addressing something different, but this ordinance is geared for the things, if you want to read the ordinance set forth therein.
Council President, and to the council, again, if we regulate whether you're allowed to sell non-UL batteries, because these makeshift batteries, as our attorney described, are the ones that are creating an issue, then you reduce the number of batteries that are going to be in these residential areas. So to that extent, we are addressing it specifically by not allowing them to be sold within the city. And then if a firefighter responds and finds that one of these batteries were not a certified battery, then they can address it appropriately with the person who bought the bike and say, where did you get this? You shouldn't have had it. That would be reactive.
Very good, sir. Thank you. Anyone else wish to address the council on this item and this item only?
Seeing no hands, I move to close the public portion.
Second.
There's a motion, there's a second to close. Roll call to close.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez,
Yes.
and Council President Scheer.
Yes, thank you. On the ordinance, is there a maker, please?
So move it.
Second.
Motion and second, roll call.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez,
Yes.
and Council President Scheer.
Yes, that was on the ordinance, correct?
Yes, sir.
Good. We're on number 2, please. Proposed ordinance 2482-25, an ordinance amending the designation of restricted parking for disabled persons by New Jersey license plate number. Is there a motion, please, to open public hearing?
Move it.
Second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez,
Yes.
and Council President Scheer.
Yes, thank you, ladies and gentlemen. At this time, the council is contemplating proposed ordinance 2482-25. Is there anyone who'd like to address the council on this item and this item only?
Second.
Motion and second to close. Roll call.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez, and Council President Scheer.
Yes, thank you. On the ordinance, is there a maker, please?
So move.
Motion and second, roll call on the ordinance.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez,
Yes.
and Council President Scheer.
Yes, thank you. We are on communications, please, and matters of common cause. Items 3 through 11. Are there any questions, please, on 3 through 11? Seeing none, is there a motion, please, to accept 3 through 11? Motion
Second.
and second. Roll call, please, on 3 to 11.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez,
Yes.
and Council President Scheer.
Yes, thank you. Separate vote, please, on number 12. Is there a motion to accept number 12, please?
Move.
Motion and second on 12 only, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Abstention.
Councilman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez, and Council President Scheer.
Yes, thank you. We're on resolutions, please. Resolutions 13 through 20, I'm sorry, 13 through 26. Are there any questions, please, on 13 through 26? Susie, do we need
No, Council President.
Mr. Fernandez?
No, Council.
Mr. Mayor, sir?
None at this time.
Thank you. Members of the council. Let's stick with 13 off, please. On 14 through 26, are there any questions? Councilman Monk.
Thank you, yes. On item 17, resolution authorizing the contract for telecom services. What is this for? This contract.
Yeah, so that contract is for buildings for the public safety, police department. It's kind of a network circuiting to connect our antennas and all of our circuits. It also provides for the also city. So it's not just public safety. Obviously, the public safety is the main focus of these, but it's upgrading all the circuits. It's kind of more of a maintenance type of thing, where it's actually broken down into $6,000 a month for the service, and then that adds up to the 120,000. But it's all basically IT upgrading of circuits and maintaining the circuits for communication purposes, specifically when it comes to police and fire, connecting to our antennas and the new radio systems, et cetera.
What's the service? It sounds more like a one-time fee, but,
Well, no,
What's
it's 6,000 a month.
so what are they all, I mean, we're upgrading hardware, this is software. What's the 6,000 a month? It's for monitoring, they're monitoring something ongoing?
Yeah, it's everything you just said.
So again, this is regional, resolution authorizing a contract for telecom service, regional and long distance. What's long distance involved? Yeah, I mean, it's talking about long distance.
I mean, it's also the calls as well. So if the councilman may recall, we did an upgrade for that. Let me just look and see where the backup is here. It's internet access and data transmission services, right? So it's basically for just kind of our data access, providing the data, being able to continue to get the internet and things of that nature.
So why the schools? There are numerous, there's a handful of schools out here as well.
So we have antennas. We have antennas on those specific buildings that we use for our public safety communications. If the councilman may recall, we did a very large infrastructure expenditure to redo all the antennas, to get an upgraded radios and things of that nature, because there were some dead spots that the fire department and the police department identified. And all of this work that we did, the culmination is the service to continue all of that working.
So we currently have something in place, and this is replacing something, or this is a new service that we haven't used in the past?
So this is upgrading the service. So we have used parts of the service in the past. The best way I could put it is we had outdated antennas that would not work with our current system. In fact, we had outdated radios that wouldn't work with the system. The state, the state troopers, right, had a specific system that was going statewide, and we couldn't access it because of our outdated, and that this led to a process that was several years to get to where we are today, getting all the upgraded antennas, and this is a culmination of all those services that are being provided for all that equipment to talk to each other.
So what actually, very quickly, Councilman, the nature of technology, as you know, it evolves and it grows. And as we are using radios as our telephone systems for 911 services, as they continue to upgrade, the antennas aren't necessarily keeping up with the capacity. We've had a number of dates where we went out completely, meaning we couldn't receive calls to 911. Radio communication was down. This sometimes happens in storms. It sometimes happens throughout the year. So we're constantly having to upgrade, but upgrades of this level don't always happen.
So what happens after 20 months? Is this supplies and equipment, is it very specific to this company that in month 20, they can, okay, instead of $6,000 a month, it's $20,000 a month, and we're stuck with this equipment? Or the equipment is something which can be used by other companies so we can stay competitive with a monthly fee?
We can use it with other companies so that the hardware will remain. Right? The hardware, the whole point of the hardware is going from analog, which we still had analog, to digital. That was the biggest thing. If you recall, we were lucky enough through the COVID-19 pandemic and the funds that we received to be able to make this upgrade, because it's a multi-million-dollar upgrade. This is like the last piece of the upgrades. But no, this individual provider is not the only provider for the services that we're requesting. Because I understand your question. Right now, we're stuck with them, and they could pretty much write their ticket to whatever they want. And in fact, there was a lot of discussion with the police department whether what type of equipment we can use. And for example, we went with Motorola's, which the chief is a big fan of the Motorola radios, but in a pinch, if we needed to use Kenmore would read the system, right? Just so to the councilman's point, it's not like I'm stuck with just this equipment for this service.
Thank you. I have one other question on 16, resolution 16. The change order for the parking deck. It's like change order number 12.
Yeah.
I believe this one is because the electrical panel is a little further than originally proposed. Like, at what point does a designer take responsibility? I mean, I understand city government has deep pockets, but someone has to take responsibility for, 12 change orders. I understand we started digging and there were issues. I get that. But at what point do we say, someone made a mistake here? I mean, electrical panel, it's like probably the easiest thing to design where electrical panels should go. I don't know, but
So I could tell you the issue with the electrical panel is that you also have a commercial component, right? So where that panel goes in relationship to the commercial component, one can argue they should have known that from the beginning because we asked for the commercial component. We would have to go after the designer, but at the end of the day, the work still has to get done. And one of the discussions we have is get the work done and then go. You still have to get the work done and then go after someone after it's done, right? Because if not, you stop.
Have we ever gone after anyone?
We've had. So what happens is there has to be a cost benefit analysis on ultimately what's it going to cost us to fight it or go after. So we do have performance bonds. And the designers require errors and omissions insurance for if there's a critical error, right? But if the work is X, right, and the cost to the attorney to fight it is more than that, then why would we, right? So you always have to do a cost benefit analysis of ultimately what the cost will end up being. Now, what does happen, and I can tell you what happens more often than going after them, is we do prior negative experience and don't award them additional contracts.
That's how we hold them.
So
accountable,
that's
to
the
say that.
biggest
We
thing.
don't use you.
So what we do is sometimes we leverage that if we have projects upcoming that you'd be precluded from doing. And I have to tell you that almost every single change order you've seen is not the original first change order, right? As an example, $47,000 was not the first request and the amount of that request.
This pushback, Councilman, I think you make a valid point, and it's something that we've historically dealt with. It sometimes feels like, and there's always an expectation of not to exceed this certain amount in terms of what you would reasonably expect can be change orders. They find something they weren't expecting, and it feels like if the expectation is 2 million, they somehow get to 2 million every single time and a little bit beyond. And to answer your specific question, I think the business administrator hit the nail right on the head. Is that if we take advantage of the city, then we remember it. We don't use you anymore. And we share that information with our colleagues around the state of New Jersey because it becomes part of your record. I think there's a little bit of extra work that gets done. I think sometimes they may identify a lot of problems. We rely on our professionals to push back. And we have our engineers sometimes may even look to a third party to say, hey, is this work really necessary? Is there any way around it? Can this circuit be put somewhere else at a cheaper cost? And if it's reasonable within a certain amount where if we're going to fight this, it delays the project and recovering the money is going to cost the city more. But again, it's that we have a record as to the council president's question. Yes, we haven't gone after people so much for money, but we've had rejected responses to bids and proposals and said, we're not working with these individuals again.
It's good to know. And because of the way the process is, the fact that we say it doesn't stop. It has to go to a board of appeals. And to the mayor's point, it will stop right there. So we negotiate and balance.
I mean, there's some attorneys that might take a fee, like take a percentage You know, they fight your taxes, they take, 17, 18, 25% of your savings. So maybe there'll be attorneys that will be interested in fighting this, taking,
Well, to be fair to the company, I do want to say that the majority of the change orders have been vetted. They're legitimate.
Yeah.
I mean, what we're doing here is historic. It's a major parking deck with a commercial component to it. So it's not like they give us the number and we just accept it. We go through our purchasing agent, we go through our engineers, we vet these and they go, it makes sense for projects like this. And then we'll look at past projects that may be similar, not to this scale, this magnitude, and I'll say, all right, we understand. Anything out of the ordinary, though, we do push back very hard.
Thank you.
It never makes it to the council until our two engineering firms, a third party and our local engineering firm, say that it's required, like the mayor said. So that it doesn't get here until those things happen.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions on 14 through 26, is there a motion, please, to accept 14 through 26?
Second.
Motion and second, roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colon Montañez, and Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. Amendment number 9 on our agenda, ordinances for introduction and first reading. Number 27, the proposed ordinance amending the designation of restricted parking for disabled persons with New Jersey license plate number. Is there a motion, please, to set down for second and final reading at our meeting of May 20?
Move it.
Motion and second, please. Thank you. Roll call.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colon Montañez, and Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. Amendment number 10 on our agenda, payment of bills. Are there any questions on the bills? Seeing none, is there a motion, please, to accept the bills as presented by the
So move.
motion?
Second.
Second, roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilwoman Colon Montañez, and Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you very much. Administrators report, Mr. Fernandez. Mr. Mayor, sir.
Council President, I just want to share, because some of you may have been familiar with him. Recently this week, we learned of the passing of former judge of the city of Passaic, Dominic Giordano, and his family, and both of his daughters, I believe. One worked here specifically. Did the other one?
He was here and at One Howe Avenue, Mayor.
I'm sorry?
He was here and at One Howe Avenue with Ballast.
Yes, and I was trying to figure out if his daughter, I know one of them worked here, both daughters worked here, but we provided for them the original portrait that hung on the core, and they were very appreciative and moved. We shared stories of the judge and his fondness of seeing his image on the wall. But we just wanted to recognize his passing and his service and the family's contribution to the city of Passaic.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you for the generosity and kindness shown to the family.
Yes, sir.
Members of the council, any comments and concerns? That being the case, is there a motion, please, to adjourn? Motion, may we have a second, please? Motion and second to adjourn. Roll call, please.
Councilman Monk,
Yes.
Councilman Love,
Yes.
Councilwoman Mello,
Yes.
Councilman Schwartz,
Yes.
Councilman Garcia,
Yes.
Councilman Colon Montañez, and Council President Scher.
Yes, thank you. This meeting is adjourned.